Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Still Curtain podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Jaggi, editor of StillCurtain.com, and joining me, as always, is Still Curtain contributor Shayne Kubas. Shayne, we're going to talk about Olympic flag football today because that's the time of the year that we're at right now. And there's not a lot else going on, but we're going to make it a really entertaining show, so don't go anywhere. We're also going to talk about the biggest strength and weakness of the Steelers' top draft choices this year from what we've noticed on film. What could be that one kryptonite to each of these players, and what could they do that could vault their performance, potentially make them a star in the NFL? But Shayne, before we get to those topics this morning, I want to start with some of the trending news around the NFL. The NFL rule changes proposals. Obviously, we saw several of these come out, and we now have confirmation of what the rules, which side they favored on. Mm-hmm. And I am pleased to say, Shayne, that the tush push isn't going anywhere. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but it's like everybody was moaning, complaining about that. We can't beat it. So if you can't beat it, make a rule to stop it. I like what the Eagles are doing over there. And I think that teams just have to find a way to just man up and put an end to it.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, there's nothing currently in the rules about it, and you would have had to legislate it out to prevent it from happening. And I think at the end of the day, the thing that people need to remember is that quarterback sneaks, like especially like 1 yard or less, any form of them are so effective, like statistically. Like they are very hard to stop. Because realistically, even if you know that the quarterback is just going to take the ball and try to just get that extra yard, they just have to basically fall forward and not lose ground. And as an offensive line, even if you have a bunch of big defensive tackles in there, like you're probably going to have the overall weight advantage and the ability to just kind of get that little bit of push you need to just get that 1 yard or even inches, right? So this is a play that's been obviously kind of perfected by the Eagles, but any team can do something similar, and they always have. Like the quarterback sneak has been a part of the game for how long now? So to me, it felt unnecessary. I do think that what teams should be worrying about is figuring out a way to combat it, right? Both the quarterback sneak in general and the tush push. And I think that there's got to be some sort of way to consistently at least make it a little bit harder, right? Because the thing with the Eagles, and this is where you can get into a little bit, is they could do that thing from like 3 yards away and probably get it, right? Like that's the big thing with them, is that it's even more effective than just get that like inches or yard. Like you can get 2 or 3 sometimes. So that I understand, but maybe the Bucs have the right idea. They brought in that Desmond Watson kid out of Florida, is like 460 pounds. Maybe they have the right idea, or hell, they might use him as the fullback when they do that, right? Who knows? But point is I think that the NFL should focus on stopping it, not legislating it out of the game.
Yeah, and Shayne, Nick Sirianni takes so much criticism over there, but you got to credit him for his ingenuity with that. And I feel like other teams, if you don't have the quarterback that can run that, maybe find someone else that can, or try to do something similar. Like it wasn't written in the rules, and thankfully it's still not going to be a rule in the NFL. And so other teams are just going to have to find a way to deal with it. The other things that we found out, the NFL rule changes, the onside kick rule, which obviously the whole dynamic of the kickoff changed last year. Now you can declare an onside kick at any time. This can come at any point in the game. I hate that the element of surprise is taken away from the onside kick. I absolutely hate that. And I think that we really saw that last year, where teams, like, sometimes you could have said, well, in this situation, maybe they would have kept the special teams on their heels and had a chance to do an onside kick here. But no, now you have to declare when you're going to do that onside kick. And it's like, all right, now you just lost the upper hand there to even recover an onside kick. But now you can at least do it at any point in the game.
Yeah, I mean, for me, for a while now, like with onside kicks, especially since they made it so that way you had to have balanced lines on both sides, where it was like pretty much impossible to get one. Let's just go to the like 4th and 20 play to keep the ball. Like, let's stop messing around with onside kicks, man. Like, it's way more fun to think about a team having to convert some incredible play, 4th and 20 play to get the ball there, 4th and whatever it is, 4th and 15, whatever. Just make it that, like, because then it's real football still. Then too, like you lose that element of like, gonna try this onside kick that has a 2% chance of getting converted. Like, let's, in my opinion, at this point, let's just stop messing around with it. Let's just do that.
Do something more creative, more fun than this. Like, even if it was, you had one guy back there and he has to go the distance and there's like 2 defenders on the field,
Something,
what would spark it up a little bit that, yeah, if you score, then I don't know. It's really stale the way it is. And I know that what they were trying with the player safety from moving to like the old XFL rules kickoff there.
I like that. Yeah, but
it didn't really change the spark of the kick
no,
returns either. It was pretty stagnant
it's
overall.
just a safer play now, which is great. But like,
Sure.
there's other ways we can help with, especially like the onset kick. So.
The other thing is the NFL playoff seeding is staying the same. So I think it was Detroit that proposed that.
I think they pulled it before they actually voted on it, from what I read. So, yeah.
So, I mean, unfortunately, since 2021, I believe, the 17-game schedule, you've got to have a first-round bye to give yourselves like a real good chance. Otherwise, like even if you finished as that second team in the conference, you don't get a break anymore. And that's just the unfortunate nature of the business in today's game. And so you're kind of playing for an all or nothing situation there. Same amount of playoff teams in the race. We still have those 3 wild card teams, which the Steelers can be thankful for because somehow they always seem to sneak in near the bottom. So that is going to remain the same. Shayne, are you impartial to the way that it's been since 2021? Would you rather revert back to how it was before with the 2 teams from each conference getting a bye and 1 fewer playoff team?
I think I like the 7 playoff teams because it just gives more things to play for at the end of the season, right? And I think the rule with what Detroit was trying to do is trying to make that more competitive too, where the divisions no longer mattered for seeding; it was record seeding. But just
I should have opened with that. But
yeah. But the division winners would still, because people were up in arms about this, division winners would still make the playoffs, just they wouldn't be seeded 1 through 4 based on record, which I'm okay with that idea in general, because I think people trying to say, oh, divisions wouldn't matter. Then it's like, yeah, they do, because if your division sucks, you can just still win it and make the playoffs. Like, you just don't, in my opinion, necessarily deserve to have a home playoff game simply because you were just the best bad team in your division, right? Like that I'm okay with in theory, but I think teams, and maybe the Lions pulled it because they knew it wasn't going to work, whatever. I think teams are too scared of that idea where like, oh, I don't play in a great division, but I love having a top 4 playoff seed every year because looking at the Houston Texans. It just, that's kind of what it is right now. So I'm okay with it as it is, but I do get, people wanting to move it around a little bit there.
And I get the logic behind it. And I think if anybody should have been pushing for this, it was the Minnesota Vikings, who finished 14-3 and had to play up from a wild card spot. And obviously they got spanked early on. And so, you don't see a team with that record ever have to do that. And so,
I mean, they're unique.
You understand,
but still,
you understand the case to be made for sure, but it stays as is. So we're going to keep on business as usual in the NFL playoff seeding. All right, Shayne, the one thing I wanted to ask before we dive into the Olympic stuff here is, what was your biggest overall takeaway from the 2025 schedule? I know Josh talked about the schedule. We talked about it as it was unfolding last week, so we're not going to do a deep dive into it right now. But what is your just overall biggest takeaway?
I think for the Steelers schedule specifically, I think it's interesting that it's not as bad as it was last year, but there is still an emphasis on playing division games late in the season, right? And I think that's going to be something we continue to see more and more for most teams, especially teams that might be more likely to, or at least based on the NFL's thoughts, likely to be competing late in the season, right? And I think from a competitive standpoint, it does put teams sometimes a little bit of a disadvantage, but I think it does make more interesting football late in the season, right? Where, maybe teams that were out of it by, week 14, those games are going to start to matter more, even if they're not really in it anymore, because let's say a Cleveland Browns team knocks off the Ravens late because they play them late. That could affect the Ravens playoff seeding, and it could affect things like that. So I think the later division games, just across the league, but also the Steelers schedule in particular, I think is a trend we're going to keep seeing happening. I think it's a big takeaway.
Yeah, for sure. And Warren Sharp posted the Steelers have the hardest schedule from week 7 on.
Yeah.
The hardest by a mile, I think, from week 11 on.
Yeah.
And it's kind of how similar to how it was last year, where you played Philadelphia, Baltimore down the stretch, the Kansas City on Christmas. And so a lot of games jam-packed into December. My biggest takeaway, though, Shayne, with the schedule is that you got a week 5 bye. Get those out of there. I want nothing to me. Okay, so I went back and looked at this, and apart from the Eagles, who were so talented, didn't matter. They had an early bye last year. They had an early bye last year. But I went back and looked. I did a study on the last 15 Super Bowls. So before the Eagles, the last 14 Super Bowl winners had an average bye week of week 10.
Yeah, that makes sense.
In their opponents, none of their opponents in the Super Bowl had a bye week earlier than week 7. Now, I'm not saying that it's the bye or nothing. There's tons of factors that go into this, but here's what you have to look at. And again, I'll preface by saying I don't think the Steelers are getting the Super Bowl, but if they were able to pull off the miraculous, make it to the postseason, and then have a couple things fall their way, they have to play 13 straight games without a break to close out the regular season, 14 games if they go to the wild card, 15 if they go to the divisional round, 16 straight games if they go to the AFC Championship. It's not going to happen, but that is an impossible task. And I don't think the NFL should be asking no team to do this. Like, you either add a second bye somewhere, or you prolong the season by another week, or we don't have any buys earlier than week 7-ish. Like, I think all the buys should occur, honestly, between like week 7 and week 10. Let them have their bye in the middle somewhere.
I tend to agree in general. I do think the right answer here is 2 bye weeks. I think that the NFL, the season is already, like, with how much stuff they pack into each season, like, you could find a way to make it an interesting week off, or like maybe the whole league takes a week off at near the end of the season, or like in the middle of the season or something like that. And there's some sort
of Pro Bowl then, like
whatever, like whatever, something like that, where they have like some sort of event or whatever it may be, right? And give these players a true break across the board, and not just a 1 week randomly in the middle of the year, late in the year. I do think that's where we're headed, but mostly because I think we'll eventually be playing 18 games is why we'll have 2 bye weeks, which I don't love that at all. But I do think 2 bye weeks is certainly something that needs to happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it won't be long until the NFL is playing like negative preseason games, and we've got like
skip the preseason. Yeah, 20. Sorry.
I've always enjoyed the preseason. I got to be honest. Like, I like.
Me too. I like seeing guys get a chance to play actual football, and not just like, you're on the team for training camp, get out of here, leave. So that's what I agree.
Exactly. Yeah. So I agree, Shayne. The daunting stretch they have at the end is tough. My biggest takeaway from the schedule is I hate the week 5 bye. And my hopes aren't that high for this team this year anyway. I think it's more about the long play at this point than the 1 year go for it all right now. But that week 5 bye, you can't do anything with that. If you're asked to play 16 straight games to try to get into the Super Bowl, that's just an impossible task. And so, like I said, Eagles did it. Steelers are not the Eagles. No team is right now. They just have more depth and talent than any roster out there. So I don't know if anybody else could do what they just pulled off. All right, Shayne. Let's talk about the Olympic flag football. So
real quick, Tommy, I don't want to do this to him, because this is the reason why this award is now being added. We do have a new award for this
just happened.
Yes. So we wanted to talk about that.
So the NFL announced the O-line award of Protector of the Year. And I like this, Shayne. I like this a lot, because the O-line, the guys in the trenches there, they never get enough love. They're never going to win Offensive Player of the Year. And obviously, they would never win an MVP. Doesn't matter how good you are. Doesn't matter if you're a bona fide Hall of Famer. Now you have this award in place so that you can recognize these guys who put their body on the line in the trenches. Makes you wonder, had this award been in place years ago, if a guy like Alan Faneca could have gotten the award. But it's something to look forward to now. And I think it's just more incentive, more way to kind of appreciate the O-line in the NFL.
Absolutely. And I think, as someone who played the position in high school and has the love for the position for that reason, and a lot of other reasons, it's a way to recognize guys who, yes, if you love football, if you watch football, you know these players, you know who the best players, the position of tackle and guard and center are. A lot of people who are casual fans simply don't, and I don't really even blame them, because there hasn't been a way to really highlight these guys in meaningful ways in the past, right?
Yeah.
Now this might give that opportunity to them. I think it's great that it's going to be, from what I read at least, that there's going to be former players on the panel, kind of debating this and talking about this. It's not just going to be like, let the writers pick out of a hat of players that they probably never watched before. Like, it's going to be guys who actually know the position voting on this, and I think that's going to be really good.
Yeah, 100%. And so I think it's going to I don't know. Maybe it will even late in the season, maybe incentivize maybe more casual fans to start looking at some of the offensive linemen that they normally wouldn't look at. But I think it's just a great way to incentivize. That's basically the MVP of the offensive line. And so I'm really curious to see who's going to end up winning that first award. Ironically, Shayne, it does come right after Zach Martin retires with a first ballot Hall of Fame career, but plenty of guys that will be in line and deserving of recognition for that. Maybe even a Steeler, maybe a Steeler. If you had to say a Steeler, I mean, maybe Zach Frazier, is he the closest to this right now?
I mean, he'd be the only one I think that has a shot next year. I mean, we have hopes for Troy Fautanu. Roger Jones is talented, but probably not that talented at this point. I think Zach would be the guy to watch out for, but I don't know how they're going to determine that. Like, are they going to have a nominee from every position and they just pick the best of those guys? Like, that's going to be interesting
too. And I haven't heard that discussion yet because this is so brand new to us. But it's like, is it going to be like the quarterback thing where it's an offensive tackle every year?
Right,
you're the most valuable, so we're giving it to you. Or does a center have a chance to win it? Does a guard have a chance to win it? So it'll be interesting for sure. All right, on to the 2028 Olympic flag football. We got confirmation. The NFL owners voted to pass and allow players to play in Olympic flag football, which will take the first one ever of flag football of any kind will take place in Los Angeles in 2028. And people are already scrambling around to put together their Olympic flag football teams. If you want to hear mine, I'm actually going to be on Stacking the Box Fansided's podcast at 5 p.m. I'm going to share my overall best possible Olympic roster that you could assemble in the NFL. But for now, we're going to keep this Steelers centric. And we're going to talk about the best Steelers fits, Shayne, for the Olympic flag football league. Now, very little chance they even get a representative because there are only 10 guys on the roster. And obviously we're looking forward a few years. And so I factored that in when I made these, when I comprised this short list, Shayne. I factored in how old is the player now? How old are they going to be when the 2028 Olympics roll around? And so some of the other older guys I didn't consider maybe as heavily as I would have at the early stages in their career. I factored, can you play both ways potentially? Because these guys are going to be gassed. They're going to be running. They do have one full rotation where you can rotate out essentially. But I played flag football and I'm not in NFL shape. I can tell you that much. But it is a lot of running, and typically most flag leagues you are asked to play both ways. And when you only have a 10-man roster, that's what you have to do. And so I comprised a list, Shayne. I want to give you 3 guys, and I only chose 3 because I really had a hard time coming up with more than that I could realistically say this guy could be in contention. Even these 3 are a stretch. I want to preface with that because there are so many talented players in the NFL. And if the league really does go with like, we're going to put our superstars against you and we're just going to annihilate the rest of the world, which they very well could do, then these guys won't have a chance. But if the NFL is willing to say like, well, we're going to leave it up to lesser known football players, maybe not our all pro guys or our $100 million guys. And we're going to let guys who would potentially be good fits, or just for the sake of this discussion, Shayne, I want to give you guys that I think Steelers players that I think would be really good flag football players. The first one I have on the list, Shayne, is Calvin Austin. Now, hear me out. I know that Calvin Austin comes in a shade under 5'8". I know that he's 170 pounds soaking wet, but this guy can fly. And we've seen it at times. We haven't seen it often, and his sample's pretty small, just 88 targets in the NFL, but he can fly. And if you get him in open space, now flag field is only 25 yards long. It's not the 53.3 yards wide. So you won't have as much space to work with, but you're talking about 5-on-5. This is 5-on-5 football. If I get a water bug like Austin out there and I just and you're trying, the goal, you can't tackle him. The goal is to try to grab his flag. So now you're reaching down at his ankles, basically trying to grab his flag as he's running legit 4.3. And this guy's explosive. I mean, he had the 11'3" broad jump, the 39-inch vertical, the 4-second 20-yard shuttle. He can fly. He just hasn't been given a ton of opportunities to do so. Now, I don't think he's the shiftiest player in the NFL, but he is fast and he is shifty enough where he can make you miss in the open field. And from playing flag football, I know that size is not the most important thing. It's can you get open? can you run after the catch, which I think in this situation especially he would be able to do.
Yeah, I think Calvin's the clear first guy you think of on the Steelers, right? Because again, smaller frame, harder to grab the flag on, incredibly fast, can break angles, especially against guys who maybe aren't used to that level of speed in general. But even just taking proper angles, at a flag football level, opposed to NFL athletes, it's just a really hard ask, right, for guys to do that. So he makes the most sense. He's a smaller frame, obviously, so getting him the ball might be difficult, but this is flag football. This is not, heavily contested NFL passing lanes. Whoever the quarterback is, whether he's an NFL player or not, probably going to be able to throw an accurate enough ball for him to get to.
Yeah.
I think he makes the most sense of the guys we have on the roster because of that element of it, where hard to grab a flag on a guy that's small, and he can just burn you most of the time, probably.
Yeah, and you won't be able to press. I mean, it's just there's too much open space. You put him in a drag and just let him do his thing.
Yeah.
I don't think the size will be that big of a factor. Now, playing both ways, he'd have to play a little bit defensive back, probably. You would assume.
I just throw him at safety, let him run guys. Run stuff
yeah,
down.
you could do that. He could probably do that. Run and grab flags obviously wouldn't be a great matchup against big receivers, but Calvin Austin is one of the few players on the Steelers that I would at least consider to say, yeah, if you are not going like the superstar route, give him a shot. I think this would be the stage over all stages, Shayne, where he could shine and really let that skill set show with his combination of speeds, quick explosion. The next guy I have on the list, Shayne, this one might catch some people off guard, but it's Peyton Wilson. And you're probably thinking, like, what would you need a linebacker for on the flag football team? Like, what is he going to give you on offense? Maybe not a lot on offense, but so the way these leagues work is you have a rush linebacker who can rush from 7 yards out from the line of scrimmage. It's time they snap the ball. Wilson has experience as a blitzer back during his NC State days. He flashed that with the Steelers last year. He can fly. I mean, you're talking about a 6'4", 240-pound linebacker that runs 4.43, legitimate 4.43 speed that shows on field. You need a blitzer more than a pass rush. You don't have to do pass rush moves. You're just getting after him and tracking down the ball carrier. And I think there's a case to be made, Shayne. As early as we are into Peyton Wilson's career, he might be one of the 5 best linebackers for Olympic flag football because of his speed and angles and just ability to make splash at and behind the line of scrimmage. Like I said, you don't need to slip blocks. You are just chasing. You are running and chasing. And so guys who are good at running and chasing will be good at this. Even Devin Bush might be good at this because that's the one thing that he could do was run and chase. Obviously come up a better year than when he played for the Steelers, but Peyton Wilson, I think, would be a guy that you can use in that facet. Not only that, Shayne, when you do drop him back in coverage, or if he's asked to cover a linebacker, he can do those things. You want to drop him back into his zone. He's a 6'4" guy that you're going to have to thread the needle over top of. Maybe he'll do one of like those halfway picks where he can pick you up between the quarterback and the intended target. I like Peyton Wilson a ton in this setting.
Absolutely. When I saw his name here for you, I was like, absolutely, it makes a lot of sense because, like you said, this isn't real football. You don't have to worry about offensive lineman blocking. You don't have to worry about getting. It's just about, can I get to the quarterback in that time frame to affect him? Not many guys in the league right now are better than that, or would be better than that than Peyton Wilson would be. It just from a speed perspective, from a get off perspective, he'd be a nightmare trying to get around and try to stop from rushing the quarterback. So that makes a ton of sense. And I think, again, what do you get on offense? A lot of these guys, a lot of the best athletes, they when they were in high school, they played, receiver or tight end or whatever. They played both ways a lot of the time, especially at smaller schools. If they didn't go to these high schools that have specific, basically NFL style role players and stuff like that. If they didn't go to one of those high schools. So I'm sure he could catch a ball and he's fast. He could probably run away from guys for a little bit. So you could figure out a way to use him on offense, but more importantly, what he could do on defense.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, you could use him there as well, but you need a couple of those rush linebackers because you're going to be gassed. I mean, all you're doing is blitzing every play. So I think we'd be good for that. And I've got one more name on the list of actual legitimate candidates. Before I do that, Shayne, I want to throw out a couple guys that you can call them honorable mentions, but to me, they just didn't meet the mark. And obviously, some of the big names, no, this is not where TJ Watt would thrive, not at this stage of his career. Before we get there, it's you don't have the speed and juice with these young bucks now. Obviously, you're not going to have trench players, so that rules out Cam Hayward, who has a legendary NFL career, but this is just not his setting.
This is not
at
real
all.
football here. Yeah.
No, and another guy that I would throw out as an honorable mention would be DK Metcalf, because of what he brings in terms of speed, size to the table. So there's certainly a case to be made for him there. In terms of just like lateral quickness, overall chops that way, and the fact that he will be in his 30s, right around 30 by the time this the 2028 Olympics take place. I did not include him on that list, Shayne. The two other players that I say I would think that some fans would get excited about, but I did not include Caleb Johnson. Just not laterally quick enough, though I do think that he has a lot of speed in the open field. I don't know what he would offer on defense either. And Joey Porter, although he has some sticky coverage ability, I don't know how much you're going to be able to get away with. You're talking more off coverage here. And can he catch the ball on offense enough to put him on that side?
Real quick, and we'll talk about your last main guy in a second, but I did have, for my pick here, I did put Joey on here. And the reason why, and I thought about this because I was like, who of the other than the three guys, because we'll mention the last guy here in a second, but other than the three you mentioned, who would I want to pick here? Who do I think would be good? I know that he isn't going to necessarily be the best, like, overall, like, coverage type for this type of thing. Because again, the lateral quickness isn't quite as good as his ability just to carry guys down the field and stay in their hip pocket. But the thing I thought about is with his length, I mean, he could take flags away from guys where he's not even in their like zip code.
That's true. Yeah,
he can legitimately like just grab flags from guys that like, and we know he likes to grab, unfortunately. Like, he's going to know how to do that. Like, I thought of it from like a, man, how are they going to get away from this guy enough to keep him from being able to grab their flag? Like, he doesn't even have to stay with them as well as he does in the NFL to be able to still make the tackle or make the play. Like, that's my perspective. And then, yeah, on offense, the hands aren't really there. So you do have to worry about that. Right. Yeah. Like, but he's a big, tall, like, athletic guy. Like, if maybe in a non like NFL setting, his hands might be good enough to offer you something on offense. But just the go gadget arm element of it is where I kind of stood with it. So that's why I want to throw him out there. But
yeah, I get that. He's got good length. It's interesting for sure. I'd like to see him in that setting to see if he'd be able to thrive there. And so the last name that I have on the list, Shayne, is Minkah Fitzpatrick. I know that he's a guy who will be in his 30s by the time that the 2028 Olympics take place, but you can play him safety, cornerback, wide receiver. He's got ball skills. He just knows the game of football. He even made that evident. Take it for what it's worth, but even like the Pro Bowl flag games,
he's real good at the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, and the Pro Bowl games are bogus anyway. Nobody's trying that hard, but he just knows the game of football as well as anybody. He's got eyes in the back of his head, and so I think that even in his 30s, early 30s at that point, he would still be fantastic for that setting. Maybe the best overall one because he doesn't have the question marks like the other three guys do on this list. So that's all I have for the Olympic flag and what Steelers would fit best there. Like I said, if you want to check out my full NFL star roster, you can do that 5 p.m. tonight on Stacking the Box. Shayne, anything else you want to add about Olympics before we get to the Steelers rookies here?
Really just that I am very curious kind of how the NFL decides to play this. Like, now we know that NFL players are going to be allowed to compete, but like you said, do they want to send our very best as kind of almost pseudo ambassadors to the game, as not even just to try to win for Team USA, but also to grow the game a little bit in that way, get these players in front of an international audience and things like that. I think that is certainly part of why they're doing this. But do they feel like they are going to incentivize players to do this? Like, are they going to ask the best players in the game to be a part of this? Do the best players want to be a part of this? I think they've said in the past, and people have made comments in the past, that they might, like some of the best players. If you're building the best roster you possibly can, I will say it's probably not going to be super interesting to watch if you aren't a fan of Team USA, unfortunately, for those competing. But I do think that how they choose to handle this is going to be very interesting. You know, do they send the best, or do they bring in guys more like, you know, what we talked about today?
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is what could really, throw everything through a loop. In this first Olympics here, if you deploy a team of superstars, one of these guys blows out an ACL or pops an Achilles, like that
That's
could
the
change it
issue.
forever in the NFL. And then every team's going to be like, no, I don't want you doing that. We're going to put this in the contract language, whatever. Like, because
That's the
I
other
can see
issue.
something like that happening. You never. I ruptured my Achilles playing flag football. So, and so it's these type of things happen.
Well, it's a lot of
You're out of your
cutting and
control.
running a lot. Like it
The
makes
worst
sense why
thing,
you'd worry about it. Yeah.
and Shayne, I think that the absolute most nightmare scenario you can conjure up for the NFL would be like if Lamar Jackson plays and he pops his Achilles playing flag football, and you don't get a superstar MVP quarterback for an entire season because of that. Like
It'll be
the
over
NFL
at that
does
point.
not want to see that at all.
Right.
But we are interested to see what that looks like, at least. If the U.S. doesn't just annihilate the competition here, like
I mean, they've done really well in professional, like in the world tournaments and stuff like that without NFL players involved. So like, you'd imagine as long as they can figure everything out, they should be able to do it. So.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure we'll have more of those conversations when the time comes up, but we got a few years to get ready for that. Shayne, I want to pivot here. We're going to talk about the rookies, but before we do that, if you are a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers and would like to support the Steel Curtain podcast, please consider subscribing to the Steel Curtain podcast on YouTube. We appreciate all of your support. If you are joining us in the live chat here, please leave us a comment, ask a question. We want to get this conversation going. I know we are in the slowest time of the NFL calendar year here, but we can still have fun with it. So ask anything you want to ask. Shayne and I will try to get to your questions. And now, Shayne, let's jump into the rookies for a little bit. We're not going to do all of them. We're not going to do the last couple of picks here that the Steelers made, but were these first four guys, because I really had a chance to grind their film. I know that you've watched film on these guys too, Shayne. I want to talk about the biggest overall strength and the biggest weakness that each of these guys have. And we may not agree on this. We didn't talk about this beforehand.
Right.
I'm interested to see what you have to say, but I know what mine would be for all of these players. And so let's start right at the top of the list here with Derek Harmon. Shayne, do you want to do strengths first or weaknesses first?
I think let's start with strength. Let's start with the positives on these guys. Okay. I think that's kind of obviously what everybody wants to hear as well. We'll start with the reasons why we think that they could be great. So
let's do it. And so I will pass it over to you first, and I'll back clean up here. So what is the biggest overall strength of Derek Harmon?
I think it's his ability to affect the quarterback in the passing game from the interior. I think in general, just his entire pass rush profile of a guy who is bigger, athletic, can get in the backfield seemingly at will. At least he did it his last year at Oregon. This past year, led all of college football in from interior pressures, from the interior for pressures from that perspective. Just in general, so disruptive in really every way as a pass rusher. And I think the Steelers desperately need somebody who can replicate what Cam Hayward has done for them in that regard for a lot of the last 10 years of his career. They have that guy now, I think, with Derek Harmon, combined with what we've seen from Keanu Benton. I think the pass rush element for Harmon is definitely his biggest strength.
Shayne, I mirror that completely. And I'll take it one step further is getting the pass rush chops that you're getting with Derek Harmon, but in the size profile,
yes,
you're getting
especially
as well, where you're pushing 6'5" with almost an 84-inch wingspan. Those are the guys that when you just think of that type of player in your head, typically you're thinking like the long power, like bull rush type players. He is nimble. He is finesse. That's why he had the 55 pressures. He can dip around you. He can run stunts like nobody's business. And so to be able to get somebody that is as quick footed in that size profile, exceptionally rare. And you look at a guy, as I kind of went back and look at like last year's draft class too, and you look at a guy like Byron Murphy who came out, who was 6 foot 297. And so you're talking with 32-inch arms, you're talking about a player who is significantly smaller and moved really well, but you understand more so why.
Right.
With Harmon, it's harder to understand why are you able to do this at the size that you are. And I got to say, and it's not a knock to him, I hope this isn't out there, I don't think he carries his weight particularly well yet. I still think he could hit that NFL weight room and tone up a little bit. In knowing that he can still move with 313 pounds on him the way that he does is just super impressive overall.
Yeah, it's just really hard to find holes in his game as a pass rusher at this point, despite the fact that he is kind of newer to being that type of defensive tackle. I think part of the reason why like you said, his weight is a little bit, doesn't carry it super well yet is he's coming down from the 340s, at Michigan State. He's
Mhm.
still losing weight from that time. So his
Yeah.
ultimate NFL build might not quite be there yet. Like what he ultimately looks like. He might end up closer to what like Cam Hayward's listed at. Now, we all know Cam is heavier than he's listed at this point.
Yes.
But still, like, so he might be more built similarly to Cam ultimately by the time he kind of settles in. So,
And I think that's what's so encouraging, Shayne, about guys like this is even when you lose speed in some burst later in your career, you've got the frame to put on
yep.
as much muscle and weight as you want to. And hey, I wouldn't be surprised if Hayward's rocking like 330 at this stage
Oh,
of
he
his
might.
career, but
He really might.
he's
Yeah.
so powerful. But the smaller guys, smaller guys will be capped because there's only
Yeah.
so much functional weight that you
You
can
can
put
add.
on. So
Yeah.
no, I would say my biggest strength overall, like you said, it's that burst speed pass rush chops, but it's being able to do that in the rarest of rare frames that you have at that size profile that you typically don't see guys move like that at that size. So Shayne, let's talk about the biggest weakness. What is Harmon's kryptonite? What is the one thing that he must improve on?
For me, it's pretty clearly his awareness and ability to finish plays. If you look at his tape
Mm.
last year, really big missed tackle rate. It shows up on film. If you look at the advanced numbers, it shows up. I think it was like over 20%, missed tackles in the backfield specifically. There's for all the pressures he had, he didn't have this huge sack numbers, and I think that's part of why he
Yeah.
missed a lot of sack opportunities. Now, in the NFL, a lot of those are going to get cleaned up, especially if you play for the Steelers. If you get there first, you probably just lead him into TJ Watt, or you lead him into Alex Highsmith, or whoever. But finishing plays more frequently in the run game too, because when he did make plays in the run game, he didn't always finish the tackle. He didn't always get the guy on the ground. So that's something that I think he's still getting. You can tell he's still getting used to his
Mhm.
new frame and his new build. Coming down from the weight he was at Michigan State. So I think that will come, but it is something that has to get cleaned up, or there could be some big plays that result from him missing tackles and things like that.
Yeah, that's critical as well. And I almost went that route. I've got a different one, and I don't hear a lot of people talking about it.
Okay.
I might be making a little bit more of it than what it is, but I've
Mhm.
watched a lot of Derek
Yeah,
Harmon film,
me
even
too.
from back starting in January
Mhm.
up until this point. One thing that I think he has to do better is play to his frame. He needs to
Right.
play to his size and length.
Mhm.
Too often on his rushes, he is getting into the chest of the offensive lineman. He's putting his shoulder in. He has a remarkable wingspan
Yes.
and terrific arm length, 34 and 3/8 inch arms. You can keep anybody at bay, even the longest offensive tackles. Like you can keep them at an arm length away and you can control the point of attack. I think that he needs to do that better because right now his pass rush plan is lacking, I think, a little bit. And he's kind of just putting his shoulder into guys, or he's getting too close to them and allowing them to control him. He should be controlling them
Mhm.
because of the elite size and length that he has with his game. Fortunately, he landed in a situation where you are working with one of the best of this generation
Yeah. And
to
doing that
bully people at the line of scrimmage with your length of one-arming people into the quarterback. Like Hayward can teach you how to do all that stuff.
for sure.
And I know that he's going to be a receptive learner. That's the personality type that he is. But that's something that he absolutely needs to improve on because I do think it's going to limit him as a pass rusher, but also as a run defender. I think that he's going to be a little bit capped in terms of his two-gapping ability unless he learns how to really extend those arms on a consistent basis and play to your length. Once he does that, I think the ceiling is extremely high for him.
Yeah, I do agree that if he doesn't learn how to lock guys out, use his length to stack and shed, do that type of stuff, he's not going to be more than a playmaking run defender at the next level. Like right now,
Mm.
I think he can kind of cut inside and make quick moves and get past guys and make plays in the backfield. But as far as being able to actually properly play down to down run defense, that is something that, especially Cam, I think, and obviously the coaches, but maybe even more so at this point, Cam is going to have to kind of get him up to speed with and make sure he understands like you have this length that you've been given, like you have to learn how to more consistently use it. And I think that's something that should come with time. Like he has the tools already, he just has to learn the actual mental side of like learning how to properly do that. So I'm confident he'll be able to do that.
All right, Shayne, let's talk about Caleb Johnson, the Steelers' third-round running back. I thought he should have been drafted a round higher, even with the
Mhm.
4.57 40, and all his film is at Iowa is just too good. He went against the most stacked boxes. He had a ton of broken tackles. Like, there's a ton to like about this guy. And so I want to kick it over to you with what is the biggest overall strength that Caleb Johnson has?
And his biggest strength is actually partly why I think he didn't get drafted as high as he may have been, and it's because I think he is very specifically a zone running back. Now, there's a ton of zone running games in the NFL, but we are seeing more of a kind of return of the power run game, so maybe that influenced a little bit. But his feel for zone and his vision as a zone runner is what makes him special, because he's not this like quick starter. He's kind of very similar to a smaller somehow, despite being like 6'2", 225, smaller Derrick Henry, right? Where he's going to take some time to get going, but once he does get up to speed and he hits the hole with power and speed, he's gone. Like, guys don't catch him, at least they didn't at the college level. That ability to get to the right space, get into the hole, accelerate through it, and then just run away from guys in the zone running game, that's what's going to make him special, hopefully, at least in an Arthur Smith offense that does that about as much as anybody does.
Yeah, he has really good top end long speed.
Yes.
Like, it's build up speed for sure. And that's evidenced by his poor 10-yard split time, which is part of the reason why his 40 time wasn't that good. It was a bad 10-yard split. But once he gets going, he can stride. And so that's where he is very different from like a Najee Harris last year, where I think that Najee was kind of the opposite, where he can get to his top end speed pretty quickly. It just wasn't very fast overall. So Johnson, I agree that that's definitely one of his biggest strengths there, being that wide zone specific runner, which is perfect for what the Steelers need. You got the guy that maybe most closely fits your style of offense of any of the running backs in this class. Now, there's a couple that I would have rather had.
They're just better players, but in terms of the fit for his own style, it doesn't really get more seamless.
But the fit was fantastic, and I'm excited to see what that's going to look like. My biggest strength, Shayne, for Caleb Johnson is I think that he is an absolute master at slipping arm tackles. If you don't hit him square on and you're just reaching out to slow him down, you're not going to slow him down. And I think that that's where he's really good. He needs that trait because he's not particularly great before the line of scrimmage. Like, I think everything that happens before the line of scrimmage, he's probably below average at, because he has the build-up speed. You can chop him down early. But once he gets that head of steam, and now you're chasing laterally and trying to get an angle on him, he can stiff arm you. He can brush off an arm tackle like it's a bug on a windshield. Like, and he can. That's part of the reason why he gets that build up speed too. But I think that that's probably the overall trait that I like most about his game, and it's going to help him, I think, convert a lot of those plays where another running back maybe would have gotten 6-8 yards. He's going to be able to slip that initial tackle and then get a lot more explosive plays off of that, Shayne. So we talked about the strengths for Caleb Johnson. What is his kryptonite? What is the biggest weakness overall in his game?
I think it's really one of two things, but I think the one I'll go with is I think his overall, like you talked about his ability to slip like arm tackles and throw stiff arms. I think his overall contact balance isn't as good as you would think it might be for someone who's 6'2", 225. Like, he will get hit down in the middle of the field by guys who are smaller than him sometimes. Like, his overall ability to stay up when contacted with a really solid hit, not just like an arm tackle or a guy reaching out for him, it's not that it's bad per se to me, but I think it's not as good as you would expect from a player that has his build, right? He is that more of that true one track runner, like get going north south, and if he runs into something at full speed, facing him, he can run through it, but getting hit from the side and trying to break off a bunch of tackles, not something he does as consistently as you might like him to.
Yeah, Shayne, I'm in the same wavelength here a little bit. I think that he is tremendous at just like hitting the hole and going, but where he lacks, he's just not super like laterally elusive. Like, he's not going to make the hard jump cuts and do things like that. He's he's more of a linear runner that follows the blocks, and he's very smooth. Like, I think he has fantastic like smoothness to his game, but there's a difference between being smooth and being like twitched up. He is not a twitched up runner at all. So I think that that's where he's going to lack a little bit. If the contact comes early, or if a guy darts in, a lot of times you just can't make that first guy miss because he needs to get that head of steam first before he glides past people. So I think that's his biggest weakness there. Shayne, let's talk about Jack Sawyer now. Steelers' 4th round draft choice. the one that not anybody saw coming really for the Steelers. They drafted another edge here. We watched him a bunch at Ohio State. I know that you've watched a ton of his film. What is his biggest overall strength, and what does he bring to the table?
So this one's tough for me because I really, really did not like Jack Sawyer at all. I really didn't. And I kind of at this point I feel almost bad because like, if it wasn't for the fact that he was on the Steelers, I wouldn't have to talk about him and continue to say that I don't like him very much. But because the Steelers did draft him, I will have to be doing that. If I was going to pick a strength of his, I think his run defense technique specifically. Not so much. I don't know if I believe he's going to be able to replicate his run defense at the next level because I don't think he has the power or the overall build to do it very well. But his just smarts in the run game specifically, knowing how to kind of the opposite of Derek Harmon, where he can stack and shed, peek in the backfield, set a hard edge. Like he does all of those things at a very high level, which is I think why a lot of people viewed him as this high floor, like edge 2 type. For me, I'm a little bit worried that he's going to have the actual power and frame to do that as well at the next level. But it won't be because he doesn't know what he's doing. It'll be because he just isn't physically capable if he doesn't do it well.
Yeah, Shayne, I think that his best trait is just his overall well-rounded, like football toughness. He can do a little bit of everything. He's kind of the definition of a good at everything, great at nothing type of guy. And you can argue that he definitely has some big weaknesses in his game. I understand your thoughts on Sawyer completely. I think it's his well-rounded, just like football grit and toughness. I know that it feels like it's kind of boxing him in a little bit. But that's generally how he plays. It really is.
It is really like how he plays.
He's a nonstop guy. He's not the best athlete, but he's a nonstop motor, going to get after you type of player. And he does find a way to create splash plays, kind of like another Steelers player that we have, a much lesser version of that player and very different football player. But he is a football player in every sense that way, where he is just going to get after you and he's not going to get beat down. So I think that's his overall best strength. And as an edge 4, I think that is perfectly fine. Like if you're asking him to be a starter, I would certainly have my reserves about what he brings there when it's hard to find like a defining like strength in his game. But I think for being a backup player, I think that is perfectly fine. Now onto weaknesses, Shayne, and I'm sure that you've got one for us here.
Yeah, so the biggest thing, and this is kind of why I ended up where I had him on my board, especially among edge rushers, which I believe ended up being 21st out of the edge rush group that I watched of 25. And I just simply don't see any path to him being a consistent pass rusher. I don't think he has any consistent pass rush move that works for him. I don't think he has any real way to win against NFL athletes, other than basically just kind of toughing it out until he can win late in a rep potentially. Like I just don't see anything beyond that for him. And which is why, like, because he's going to be an edge 4 for us, I think that's fine. But I don't know if he ever can ascend beyond that. So it's like, if you're going to take a guy in the 4th round to be your edge 4 as a rookie, that's cool. If you want him to be more than that eventually, then maybe not. So that's my biggest thing, is I just do not see an athletic profile or a way for him to consistently beat NFL tackles at the next level.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And if I'm to box in my strength into, if I really had to pick one thing and just set of saying he's well-rounded, I think he holds up really well at the point of attack.
Yes,
I think
that's his bread and butter.
That he does do well, and he can stack and shed, especially in the run game. But you said it, and his biggest weakness pops on film to me. He is very stiff-hipped. Like he's an upright rusher. He's the polar opposite of Nick Herbig in almost every way.
Quite literally the opposite player.
Herbig is bendy, fluid, bursty. Like I've literally seen Herbig get on all fours like a dog before and pounce back up.
It's crazy.
So he can't. Jack Sawyer cannot do that type of stuff. Like he's going to be a pretty up and down edge rusher. He's not going to be able to bend that corner very well. He just doesn't have that hip fluidity, which is super important as a pass rusher to at least have some of that. And if you're in your game, and if you don't have that in your game, you better be real long and real bursty at least. And he's not those things either. He's not a boy mafia in that way, because he's got short arms and he's not particularly explosive. And so that combination of those things that we just mentioned, Shayne, is why he does have a pretty low upside, I would say, in the NFL. Now, he can prove us wrong. Obviously, players have done that before, but it's hard to think he's going to be a super productive pass rusher at any stage of his NFL career if he's lacking some pivotal characteristics to his game. And that's what I think in terms of his biggest weakness is overall stiffness as a pass rusher. The length I can get away with. Like, honestly, that there are guys who are not long. Like Aiden Hutchinson is not a long pass rusher. The Bosa's aren't
you
long.
don't have to have it.
So,
it's one of those things where if you have it, you have a built-in advantage, right? It allows you to play off of it in a certain way. We've seen guys, though, prove it, and Herbig's one too. You don't necessarily need that if you have the right combination of physical traits around it, or the right ability to win as a pass rusher with your savvy and your ability to, especially lateral quickness with some guys. Like Hutchinson kind of teleports away from dudes sometimes. Like it's you can't, it doesn't matter if he's not as long as you, because you can't touch him anyway, because now he's 6 yards away from you after like 2 seconds. So that's the type of thing that Sawyer lacks, though, too, unfortunately.
Exactly. And I don't want to come down too hard. We're talking about a 4th round pick here and a guy who was still tremendously high on the consensus board compared to where the Steelers pick. He was 75th overall on Marcus Mosier's draft expert consensus board. I know you don't agree with that.
Yeah, it's tough. It's
so
tough. I feel
but a lot of people really liked him because he showed up big in big moments.
He did.
Which are he made some important plays. He had a productive career at Ohio State. He played for a big program. So there are some things to like for sure, but I would temper expectations in terms of thinking that, the Steelers just found TJ Watt's replacement. Like, I tamp that down a little bit because right now we're probably getting a quality backup. I think that's what we're hoping for right now. And if he can be that as a 4th round pick,
that's fine.
You've done your job, and we'll see if he can exceed that. Shayne, I only want to go over one other player on the list that we have right now. Do you want to go over more than that? Like, I don't know what I didn't prep you for any of this.
The only other guy that we could throw out if we want to, Will Howard.
Let's do Will Howard too. So let's hit YA Black first, and then let's do Will Howard.
We could probably
to put him in our meeting notes, so that's on me.
There you go. But we could definitely talk about him too.
Yeah, let's do it. And we'll table those 7th rounders because I haven't had a chance to dive into their film.
One is definitely not that he shouldn't be drafted, but one we know why he was drafted, and the other one is Dante Kent. We'll talk about him at some point. But yeah.
So let's talk about YA Black first. A big old defensive tackle from Iowa. In terms of like the size profile makeup, like kind of the body type that's hard to find, the 6'6", 330, 35-inch arms, like he's a Steelers guy that way. Like you had an idea that they were going to be eyeing him. They even showed interest in him, obviously, during the pre-draft process. But what is his biggest overall strength? Shayne, I know you've watched a lot of Big Ten football. Yes. What can you say that YA Black does very well?
One of the things he does very well is he knows who he is as a player. And the best way to describe that, he is, as you mentioned, he is tall, he is long, and he is heavy. He plays exactly like that. He does not pretend like he's not that guy. And there's some guys that do that, and that's where you get in trouble. But this guy knows who he is as a player. He knows why he was drafted. He knows why he was on the field at Iowa. And honestly, sometimes that's the biggest hurdle with guys like this that are this big, long, strong. Like sometimes they want to do a little bit more than they maybe should. Sometimes they want to be different players there. I'm looking at you, Deion Walker, out of Kentucky. No offense to him. But again, like this guy plays exactly how you would think he plays. Now, how well is he going to be able to do those things at the next level against tougher competition? That's why he gets drafted a little bit later. People aren't 100% sure. But he should, if all things play out well, have a defined role in this defense. And it's something that we have not really had in a long time. As this guy, you just park in the middle of the field and tell teams good luck trying to run around him or run through him. That is where his biggest strength lies. And I think it's why he ends up on this team.
Yeah, it's the anchoring ability very easily. You plug him in. It's not hard to see what his role is going to be. You plug him in. And he's a guy who is very stout at the line of scrimmage. And the Steelers have been lacking this guy
so much
for so long. I mean, outside of Hayward, which obviously Hayward can
but he
at the point of attack.
Yeah.
But and Shayne, this is wild to me. And I might reveal what I'm thinking of him next here in terms of weaknesses. But the Steelers at the nose tackle position, what have they been doing? Like Montravius Adams came into the league as like this 287 pounder, no ability to hold up at the point of attack at all. They've been trying to plug guys in there that aren't nose tackles. These guys are not zero techs. They're not one techs. You have to be strong to do that. And quite frankly, the Steelers guys that they've been running with have not been strong. And so I at least love that YA Black is the opposite of those guys. He's not an athlete, but he can stop you dead in your tracks if you come at him. And so I like that. And I think that that's his biggest overall strength to his game. Now, his weakness, Shayne, I think I know where you're going with this, and I probably have the same one, but what would you say is the biggest weakness of YA Black?
That he doesn't move particularly well, right? This is a guy who, again, he knows who he is, and it's good because if you try to be anything else, it wouldn't work out so well. Mm-hmm. This is not the Jamari Caldwells of the world from Oregon this past year, who's 340 but moves like he's 300. This is not one of those like quick twitch, nose tackles, guys you don't expect to be super quick. He is exactly what he looks like, and that's okay ultimately because, again, his role is going to be specific if he has one. But that's the ultimate issue with him and why he doesn't go earlier than he goes to the Steelers, because he is very specifically defined as just a run plugging 0-1 tech type of guy.
Yeah, and I know that he would not reveal his role. Steelers media asked him about that at rookie minicamp. He's a freaking nose tackle.
We know.
That's just what he is.
Let's not
and if they play him somewhere else, shame on the Steelers.
That's, a whole
sure, you have the height and length that you desire in that 3-4 defensive end that you love. But I have my reserves about him actually playing that role in the NFL when you are a poor athlete by NFL standards. He would need to cut 15-ish pounds and show me that he can gain a step laterally to play that role. I don't want him playing that. I don't know. I don't care if you're tall. You can still anchor better than anybody not named Cam Hayward on this team. That includes Derek Harmon. And so I would plug you in right there at zero technique, in early down situations, in obvious running situations, in goal line situations. You are my new nose tackle.
Yeah.
Goodbye, Montrevious Adams. I want a guy that can actually stop the run.
Play Keanu Benton where he should play as well.
Yes, and that's the thing with Benton too. Like, Benton needs to be a 3.
Keanu Benton's never seen a backfield he doesn't want to get into as fast as possible.
Yes.
Okay. And that's okay.
I know.
But you can't do that.
And I've heard people argue. It's like, well, he played nose tackle at Wisconsin, and he should be a nose tackle for the Steelers. He's a 3 technique by the definition of how he performs. Like that is his game. He's the nimble, bendy, I'm going to slice into the backfield type of player. Mm-hmm. If you start playing the guys in their correct roles now that you have talent on this defensive line, I'm excited to see what can happen. Just make sure you don't mess this up, Steelers. And so, yes, to bring it all back full circle here, his biggest weakness is he's a nose tackle and a nose tackle only. He does not have the lateral quickness. He's a very niche role player, and you're going to play him on running downs. And that's essentially what YA Black is to me.
Yeah. And again, that's totally fine. I think now if he shows up at camp and he's weighing like 320, I might have to try to talk to him like Tom myself. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I might have to be
I know. It's
what are you talking
in the wrong direction
here? What are we doing, folks? Let's stop doing this.
Yeah. No, I would like to think that he has more ability than that, but I'm not naive enough to believe that in the NFL, he's going to be able to play that role for this. He's not going to be Stephon Tuitt out there. So
no, he's not.
All right, Shayne, let's do one more on our list, and that is quarterback Will Howard, who has been just an enormous talking point around the Steelers fan base. I understand why. Their quarterback situation is awful.
Yeah.
And this is that big splash player that you got, national championship quarterback. We both shared our opinions on Will Howard before. I'm not a huge fan, although you can certainly talk me into it in the 6th round. And I was well on board with the selection by that point. They need the quarterback depth. I'm not buying Howard as like this next franchise quarterback of the team. Like some are trying to say that he's going to be. Stranger things have happened. But Will Howard, if we talk about his strengths here, Shayne, what is his defining strength? Does he have a defining strength to his game?
I think if you're going to pick a defining strength for him, and I think it is hard where he's not this guy that has any one particularly incredible trait, right? And there's a reason why he goes in the 6th round. I had him more as like a 4th round guy. So like, again, still good value for me, but ultimately probably the athleticism for his size, like the ability to be a playmaker as a runner, a guy who's going to be very tough, going to get tough yardage, willing to put his body on the line a little bit, which that's awesome when you're trying to play for a national championship in college. When you get to the NFL, if you're going to be asked to be a starting quarterback, you don't always love that. Unless you're like Josh Allen, who is made of titanium and people bounce off of him like he's nothing, like he's not made of real stuff. And that's not quite Will Howard. I know some people have tried to compare him to Josh Allen, which I hate to break it to you guys. There's one Josh Allen on this planet currently, and he plays in Buffalo. It's just, yeah. So if he's going to have a defining strength, I would say it's that, just because it is something that we see so many guys who are playmakers from the run game now, but not as many of them anymore. These big, powerful guys as well. So
Shayne, Will Howard's biggest strength is also Mason Rudolph's biggest strength to me. Yeah. But that is that he has incredible size as a pocket passer. Like,
yes, he's very.
You just don't get guys very often in the NFL today that are 6'4" and an eighth, 235 pounds. Like, he can stand back there and he can deliver the football. I think there's a lot to be said about that, because as quarterbacks are getting shorter in today's game, we've got the Kyler Murrays and we've got even the Cam Wards coming out in the first round that stand under 6'2". Like, having size as a pocket passer, it does matter. You can see over your offensive line. You can scan the field easier. And so I think that that's going to give him a leg up on 90% of the quarterbacks in today's game. But if my biggest strength, though, is the fact that you are bigger than the average quarterback, it probably shows that I don't think that he has anything else that in his game that he does particularly well. He's a good athlete in respect to his size, but more of like the Daniel Jonesy athlete, where you kind of linear out in space. Yeah. So I do think, though, that there's something to be said for that. And sign me up for the guys that if I can get the big quarterback that also has some athletic traits, then I'm cool with that for sure. Biggest weakness in Will Howard's game, Shayne?
Honestly, until the playoffs started last year, he was just so inconsistent as a passer. Like his ability to place the ball in particular, because he was a generally accurate quarterback. We see a lot of guys like that, where it's like, well, they're not exactly precise, but they're getting the ball out at the right time. They're putting it on the guy to some degree. He was really bailed out by having Ohio State's receiving core for a lot of the season, right? Now the playoffs, he started to actually legitimately play some of the best football that he's probably ever played, right? Any level. And you hope that he's more like that guy than he was, the previous 11 or 12 games before the playoffs started, right? But there is a sizable difference between those two players, right? The player he was at the end of the season, what he was most of the season. But if he can't be more consistently accurate like he was more so in the playoffs, he's not going to be able to survive at the NFL level, because there's too many guys who can make plays on balls that are just a little high or just a little off to the side. Like, the windows are going to get smaller. You're not going to be throwing to Jeremiah Smith versus the third corner on SMU. Like, it's not how it's going to work at the next level. So that's the biggest thing I think could hold him back, is just his general accuracy and ball placement.
Shayne, before I get to my biggest weakness, I'll have an honorable mention for his biggest strength. I think that he is a really good film room guy, and I think that showed with John Gruden. You watch a John Gruden film room, he knows what he's doing.
Absolutely,
and he's got the leadership qualities that you would desire at the position. My biggest weakness in his game, however, is I just think he has got such a pedestrian arm, like total arm talent. You talked about the accuracy. I just don't even think he can drive the football very well, and he kind of mirrors Rudolph that way for me as well. Where you can throw, there's a difference between throwing the ball far and throwing it with zip on your passes, and I just don't think that he does that very well. I think he does it at a bottom of the, like, if I were comparing him to like starting NFL quarterbacks, be right near the bottom of the league in terms of velocity. For backups, it's fine. Like, if you're going to be a backup, which is probably his career route anyway, you can get away with having that level. It's not Skylar Thompson bad velocity, which you watch him at Miami. It's like, you are a scout team quarterback, but it's not good. And so I think that he will always be limited in some regard, because you just don't have a ton of velocity behind your football. And so I think that is where I would go with the biggest weaknesses. If you guys agree with the strength and weaknesses that we've laid out here, please leave us a comment section on this stream down below on YouTube. Also, if you have anybody else that you would like to throw in the mix for a potential Steelers candidate in the 2028 flag football Olympics, throw that in there as well. I'd love to hear what you have to say on that. You can follow our written content on stillcurtain.com, where we talk about these things and more, broken down in multiple articles every single day. And so please check us out over there as well. We go live on this show every Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. Also check out Josh Yours' show. He goes live on Mondays at 1:30 p.m. Thank you for following us on the show today. You can follow Shayne on X at Shayne Kubas. You can follow me on X at Tommy Jaggi. You can download the Steel Curtain podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Also check us out on YouTube or ask Alexa to play the Steel Curtain Steelers podcast. And thanks again for listening to the Steel Curtain podcast.